Social media, YouTube, I don't know what you tend to scroll on, but as you're scrolling, every once in a while, you might see some form of a variation of something like, I have 3 tips for you to make $1 million in the next month. If you follow my proven and tested ways, you will get rich. Or maybe it's, I made $100,000 from the comfort of my couch. I'll show you how if you want to find freedom from home. And if those are too new, maybe you could think back a little bit and that prince from Nigeria that was always hitting us up, right? You get the email and it's, hey, I just came into some money and I need somewhere to send it to. Can you give me your bank account information? I'll drop it to you. Which is, by the way, like he's totally trying to do money laundering. Like that's a thing, but guaranteeing you money. That's got to be my favorite one. Now here's the thing, is this isn't new. You could think about the biggest scandal maybe more recently was like Fire Festival. The guy that like sold everyone to the island and then it was just completely like disarrayed and he walked away with a bunch of money. Wild little documentary on Netflix if you want to watch it. But you can think of Bernie Madoff. Like that's a thing, right? Like you actually use that word to describe when people like rip other people off. You can go all the way back to Charles Ponzi, who was like kind of the originator of the Ponzi scheme, right? Like you just get more people doing these things and you pay off the first people that invested in with the new people's money and never really anything's happening. You can actually go all the way back to like early 1800s and there was a guy by the name of Gregor McGregor, sorry, which if your name sounds like that, like you gotta be, like I feel like his name's setting him up to rip people off. He made up a country. He literally went to people in the UK and said, I have this country, if you start to invest in it, one day you can live there, there's water like gold, like all these different things. The English government invested in this. He literally, to today's equivalent, raised billions of dollars to a fake country, paille, that he made up. Now with all of this, like that's some crazy stuff, right? But if you're anything like me, I could think back to that first email I got from the Prince of Nigeria. And I was like, ooh, cool. He chose me. Like out of all the people. Like he's so generous. I'm so, yes, what do you need? I don't have a bank account yet, but yeah, I can do this. Right? You got like your email before you have a bank account anyways. But a part of me, like, as I look at all this, it's just nuts. Like, there's no way. Like deep down inside, I'm like, I want to believe it. I want to think that there's a place called Paille that if I write this Gregor McGregor dude a check, like I'm going to end up there. And I'm like, be a part of like the parliament there. Or whatever it is, like there's something inside of me that wants to get rich quick. And as much as it feels very like scamish and like you just know, there's also a part of you that deceives you to say, oh no, just trust them. Like this is your chance. This is your opportunity. And how many people do they get, right, in these schemes? And that's not to diminish intelligence. I know some very smart people who have been incredibly duped. And I'm like, I thought you were smarter than that. But like they're actually like really smart. Like they get life and like they do well and they still get duped. And I think just deep down inside of us, like we want to believe that we can get rich quick. And for me, I know that's attached to something like I want security. I want well-being. I don't want stress around finances. I think that sometimes if I had just a little bit more, then everything would be good. We could just pay off that credit card bill that we have right now and not have to worry about the interest rate and think about how it's going to pan out over time. Like, I can actually get ahead in this area or do this thing. Like, if I just had a little bit more, I think my problems would go away. Like, life would just be a little bit better. Okay, so for you, I'm curious. Say we did get rich quick. Can we go down this road? You guys ever play those games, like hypothetically? Okay. So you could like go to a place right now. I'm not going to do the whole like lotto thing. That's just too big of a number to even think through. But if you go into a place right now and you do like a $25 scratcher ticket, like something like that, like you could legitimately win hundreds of thousands of dollars on those. Pay a little bit more for a ticket, the more you could actually get over time. So let's start here. There's a card under your chair. There's a pen with it. And what I want to do is hypothetically, let's walk through a scenario where this afternoon you're going in to buy some stuff for the barbecue. The person in front of you buys a scratcher and you're like, you know what? Today might be my day. You buy it, you scratch it, wham, $250K. That's yours to do whatever you want with it. What's your top 5? If you think through that, you just came in at $250,000. I want you to write just the top 5 things that you would do off the bat. The world is yours. All the money is yours. Your friend, your parent, your spouse cannot tell you what to do with it. Your children, you get to do what you want. 5 things. You may have just found out how quickly $250,000 will go by. That always sounds a lot bigger until you actually put it on paper. That's a truth. So hey, what we want to do this morning is continue in our message series, Proverbs, Wisdom for a Wired World. And what we're attempting to do is actually look at the ancient texts and consider the ways in which something like the book of Proverbs, which could be considered just a varying array of random sayings that are supposed to be helpful or not, but kind of contradict each other, and not really too sure what to do with it. But it seems like over time, more and more people, even in the New Testament of Scripture, were informed by these Proverbs. And what the Proverbs writer is trying to do, essentially, is offer wisdom for their young son. So in the beginning, they're writing to their young son, saying, hey, here is the way in which you will find life and beauty and goodness. And here are the ways in which you will find destruction. That your life will lead to death, both physically and metaphorically. And so we want to take these on because for us right now, in a very wired world, we could get whatever we want, however much of it we want, within the reasons of how much we can afford, as quick as we want. Whether that be information, whether that be concert tickets, whether that be the thing that your kids want so bad that you go to Amazon for. I mean, whatever it is, you just got an inkling one night, and you can just like DoorDash a meal to your porch. Like you can just go through all the different ways in which we are so wired that do we ever pause enough to slow down to think, do I need this? Do I want this? Is this good for me? Is this good for other people? Because I would bet if you're here, you're looking for a way to live a more beautiful, good, whole, non-anxious, stress-free life, like with peace and joy and hope and healing. Like there's so many different things. And so if we actually look to a text like this, it's a dad writing to his young son saying, son, here's the way that you'll find life. Here's the way. So when we think about money, we don't have to just go off of what we're feeling inside. We don't have to just go off of when someone hands us a 3x5 card and then a fake $250K next to it, just kind of rattle off the first things that we think or feel in the moment. We don't have to do that. We can actually look to something that grounds and hold us together. So when we think about money, which, by the way, may be one of the higher tension topics in any of our lives, people are more likely to talk about their sex life than they are their debt. Like, there's a lot of things around money for all of us in this room. So if it's like a moment, then like that's okay. Like if the temperature goes up a little bit because we're talking about money, that's fine. Because, I'll get to more later. So, in the book of Proverbs, when we're trying to figure out what to do with money, with our wealth, the writer says this in Proverbs 3, 9-10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, and you will get rich quick. No. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Now, really we're talking about an agrarian society here that really lived off of farming, agriculture, more and more. And we less and less are an agrarian culture as we move more industrial with things in cities and metropolitan areas. And some of you are actually like still connected to the ag world a little bit, and like you're a rarity in the people sitting next to you. Most of us do not farm. Thank God I don't have to live by farming because anything we plant seems to die over and over and over again. But for this culture that the Proverbs writing is reading to is essentially your life was seen by what you could fill your barns with. Because as you know, crops oftentimes rotate throughout a year, so what you're able to store away is your possession to live off of, to sell, to provide for others. Everything was found in this idea of an agrarian farming culture. And again, he says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. So all the crops that you bring in, the first fruits we think about traditionally could be considered like a 10% tithe. So maybe of the first portion of what your crop was, go to the Lord to honor him. Everything that you brought in, everything that you grew, everything that is in your barn, the first portion of that goes to the Lord. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. And then there's this weird thing. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing. Your vats will brim over with new wine. It sounds like if I give to God, he will give back to me even more. If I give to God, I will prosper even more. These are some of the ways in which we can come up with a theology called pretty much a prosperity gospel, that if I find life in Jesus, everything will go better. That I will have more of the things that I want, that I will have no more pain. But if any of you have been following Jesus for a millisecond, you probably have realized that that's not the case. But there still seems to be this relationship in the way that we give to God and in the way he interacts with us after that. Another place in Proverbs 11, one person gives freely. Let's start thinking about ourselves here, yet gains even more. They give freely, they gain even more. Another who withholds unduly but comes to poverty. I hang on to everything, and I have everything that I have, but yet I still find poverty. A generous person will prosper. The one that gives things away will actually prosper in life. And whoever refreshes others will then themselves be refreshed. So if I actually give and do more for other people, somehow I'm refreshed in that. And people actually curse the one who hoards the grain. So if I'm holding on to my things, there's actually people who are like cursing me. I don't seem to be making any friends, but they pray God's blessing on the one who is willing to sell. The one who is actually willing to provide for other people. Then people look at them and say, God, continue to bless them, because I know that what they're giving is actually working into other people's lives. Will you bless them? Continues in 27, whoever seeks good finds favor, but evil comes to one who searches for it. Now, this one might feel a little bit off, but you're thinking about it in a monetary context. If I'm trying to find favor in all that I have, in my possessions, and my money, and my wealth, if I'm trying to do all of that, evil will come. What is that? But if I just do good, favor will then find me. And lastly, those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. Some conundrum passages in here. As I read through this and evaluate my own life, like I find both sides of these, to be honest. I'm like, oh yeah, that's me, giving away, blah, blah, blah. Wait, why am I trying to hold on to this and not like actually giving and work? So you work through this, and every layer you're like, oh, I'm good, and I'm not. And oh yeah, I'm doing that, but it seems like evil's coming my way. Why do we? So working through this, there seems to be a consistent thread about the relationship of you and your money. And then like the other line is like God and others. And they're just all interconnected. Like it's not just you and your money. I know we think that. Everything else, God, hey, you know what? My kids are yours. Let's be honest. Like, whoever they come to be, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to steward their life, but my money's mine. Like, honestly, like there can be a releasing of our kids to God before the releasing of our actual money. And there's so many other ways this plays out. Like, if you just pause for a moment and you think about a generous person in your life. Like I think about Caitlin's grandma, Bev, who has since passed. But I only got to experience it once, but I heard these stories that Grandma Bev was known for slipping the kids' 20s. Like wherever you were, if it's a little house party, mine happened to be in the back of a car after I lost $100 at a casino. That was a long time ago. But like she just slipped me a 20. And what's interesting about this is if you've ever been around a generous person, it's not always about the thing that they're giving or that you receive. It's more about them to you. And that you're actually experiencing something of them that is good and right and true that you want more of. Whether she slipped me a 5, a 20, or 100, like I'm still going to feel that thing like, oh, this person is different. There's uniqueness. Now, it's not just about giving away 20s to be generous, but she was just this generous person that you felt like, oh, this is the kind of person we need more of in the world. That is just sees their money more than just their money. And so my question for us this morning is your money a means to an end, or is it the end? Because as we read through Proverbs, it seems like it's a means to something. It never actually just stops at grabbing your crop. It never just stops at getting the money. It never stops at having prosperity. There's always a pass-through or a working out. It seems that money is a means to something else. But when you think about your career, when you think about your retirement, when you think about what am I doing in college to then graduate to make, it seems like all of these work towards money as the thing that we end at. Well, why are you in the job that you hate? Oh, well, it pays good. Well, we've just said, like, money right there is now the end, rather than money being a means to something. And what I think we end up seeing in some of this is we see me first living with some leftover giving. So what could tend to happen is that if we actually see money as the end, because it provides for everything and it does everything and it makes all my wishes come true, and it's the way I actually compare myself to other people, it's the way I find social standing with other people, right? It's something to do all these other things. It's still the same. When we think about it actually being the thing that we live from first, and then we think, okay, now while I'm doing all these things now, I still want to do these things in the future. Like me, I live with Justin Vartanian's head in the back, or voice in the back of my head sometimes, like, don't forget about savings, don't forget about retirement, so I do that. I'm like, but that's the first thing I want to cut, because now I got to do this, and I want to spend it now. Like, I don't want to wait. But there's this thing where there's these future aspects. Well, and then whatever's left, then that's, kind of not the end. Like, that's where it could be a means to something else. So as you think about your own money right now, as you think about your own possessions, as you think about your own budget, like, how does this play out? If I look through the lens of money being the end, I look into myself, and that becomes everything. And I think what this could be attached to the most could be called the consumption assumption. And the assumption that if I just have more consumption, if I get more of what I want, if I have more of the things that make me happy in the moment, that's the assumption that says then I can find security, then I can find fulfillment, then I could be whole, then I could be at peace, and I won't have any more worries. That's the thing I will use to strive for me to actually become what I want to become. So I live first. I got to do all the things I want to do with my money. And I might be thinking about savings. Savings accounts from the generation before to now are like astronomically different. Most people do not have a savings. Most people do not have a savings. They don't have an emergency fund. There's no margin. And this isn't, if you feel that way, this isn't a shame thing. It's just that there's been a large cultural shift in that there was retirement accounts before for certain reasons to actually hold for certain things, and less and less and less and less and less do we actually think for the future. Do we think outside of ourselves? But we live for now. And I think this can be attached to just a few things. This consumption assumption, control, comfort. What's my third one? Is it up there? Gosh, I wrote the wrong one down on the paper, and I was like, that's not right. I knew it was something else. But then I had to look up, and okay, comparison. There we go. It all makes sense now. But like, if you think through this right now, like if you sit with this for a second, like, in which way does this most interact with your money? So if you think about your finances, if you just had more, if you had that $250K, would you have just more control? Like, well, then I could do this, and then I could move this thing, and then I could have this over here, and then this person would do this for me, and everything's sorted, everything's good. There's no unexpecteds. Like, man, I got control. Or we go to comfort. Like, man, I just feel good knowing that there's a reserve in my account. Man, if I could just get more in there, the more I'm going to be comforted. I have zero worries because money solves all things. So am I just striving for comfort? And then I wonder, and this one's a little bit tricky, but I wonder how much is actually attached to comparison. I had to find a third C. But I think through this, as you scroll social, as you look at your neighbors, as you think about people in your relationship with, Does your financial means become something to where you compare with them to then, well, they have that, and they took that vacation, and they're doing that thing, and their kids get that. Like, I want more so that I could do that too. Because I don't want to be like left behind or seen as less. And so in all of these, really what we're living from is that if we can just consume more, we will find security. And we'll find everything that we want in these places. That we will find ultimate goodness and beauty and love. But the research would show the more money you have, the more stressed that you are. And it's all relative. Over half the world lives on less than $2 a day. Like, that's a weird thing. I remember being in Haiti, and like we had the opportunity to go spend a little bit of cash. I had $10 in my hand. And this actually then provides for an entire family to live for the next day, just to buy some rice from them in the market. Could you imagine? We double that with a quick purchase from the Review without any thought. Less than $2 a day, or half the world. It's all relative. So why, if we look at all of these, you talk to the person next to you, they want more for comfort. They want more for control. When they do the comparison game, they're comparing to people that have even more. And you just keep climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing. And I think if this is the backdrop, this me-first living, we could always feel like giving away money is simply financial irresponsibility. Well, I can't give away money because that doesn't make financial sense. Now, if you give away enough, you could get a tax break, so that's something to play on in the U.S., but tell that to most Christians living amongst the world. Do we just give because we get the thing, which now that number climbs higher and higher. I know I don't hit it, but to actually have it go against your taxes. So anyways, as you think about that, is that the reason? And but how much of this is seen as I know I should make a smarter decision with this. There's something I should be doing for myself or for my family, or there's something else, if I give this away, I won't be able to get that. These wrestles over and over and over again. Or it plays the other way, okay, I know I can give this amount and everything else still be good. If I just did this, okay, I did my part, gave a little bit, feel good, doing the thing that I'm supposed to do, good Christian, check a box, I don't know. But then I don't even feel it. I still am in control. I'm still comfortable. I can still do the comparison game. Multiple ways to go about this. But here's what I think. When you are the end, when I'm the end, when your money is the end, when my money is the end, giving generously could feel like financial irresponsibility. See, it's not just that giving money in itself is that, but when it's attached to you and I being the end and money being the end of itself, then it feels like financial irresponsibility. And what I think is interesting, even through the Proverbs, we can look at other ones in the Old Testament, but Jesus talks a lot about money. He actually talks more about money than he does heaven and hell. But heaven and hell is the thing that we live by. Are you going to heaven? Are you, there's people that go around, if you died right now, are you going to heaven? And then they try to coerce you into something by twisting your arm. Anyways, whole another traumatic thing that we could work through with half of you. But he talks way more about that than heaven and hell in itself, yet we sit around determining whether people are going to heaven and hell. Or hell. I guess you can't do both. That'd be weird. Anyways, but think about that. One of the most oftentimes talked about things is money. And because I think Jesus realizes something that we don't oftentimes grasp, is that money has power. Money has spiritual power. Money has physical power. He actually talks about it being a power in your life. And he also tells us to not worry, which is another weird thing. Because I do worry. A medical bill just came in just recently. Came and had a talk on Thursday, and we're what do we do? Well, we need to make some changes for the next 6 months. We need to do this, we need to do that. Now we could do that, but how much of that is attached to worry? But now we can't do this thing now, but we just play through it. And he actually says, don't worry. Think about the flowers in the fields and the birds in the air. Do not worry. But it takes a lot to get there, because he realizes that money is a rival god. It actually rivals where we put our dependence. If we want to think about an idol, it's the thing we worship that will give us what we want. It's the thing that we can depend on when everything is going awry. It's the thing that we can look to when we have nowhere else to look. Keep going, keep going, keep going. He sees money as a rival god. And so he's trying to tell us over and over and over again, if you do not realize the power that money will have in your life, you will be controlled by money. But I don't want you to be controlled by money. I want you to be involved in my life. I'm going to breeze through this piece, and we're going to try on a little practice and pray with one another. He actually gets to a point. There's this whole story about a shrewd manager. And Jesus tells this story. He makes up this story that in itself didn't happen, but it's true. And he's talking to a group of people. And there's this money manager for this rich person, and he got in trouble. And he wasn't doing the things he was supposed to do. And the manager calls him in and says, hey, you need to give an account for the things that you've been doing because the books are off. And the guy kind of like panics, and he's like, shoot, I can't dig a hole anymore. Like, I don't have another job. Like, I got to find a way to like take care of myself. So he actually goes to the debtors of his manager, and he goes to one, and he says, hey, how much do you owe my boss? And the guy says, about 900 gallons of olive oil. He says, okay, cool, hold on. Sit down very quick before anyone else like realizes that we're having this conversation, and just real quick make it $450. You only owe $450. You don't have to pay him the 900, you only owe $450. Then he goes to the next person, how much do you owe? Yeah, about 1,000 bushels of wheat. Okay, cool. Hey, real quick, just 800. You don't have to pay. That's 200 off. You don't have to pay the first 1,000. And then what's interesting is when the manager finds out about this, he calls, or the boss finds out about it, he calls the manager back in, and everyone's looking like, oh, he's gonna grill this guy. What an idiot. Like, he's already messing up, and then he tries to go like take money from him by like pleasing these other people. What is he even doing? It's not even his money. And the boss tells him, and actually commends him for acting shrewdly. Meaning that you're acting thoughtful and with wisdom, and you're actually thinking through and making a plan. How interesting is that? That this money manager is actually like doing bad. He's ripping off his boss, but then his boss commends him. And then he actually says this at some point, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. And I'm going to get to what I think that manager is serving here in a second, but this is what living starts to look like in God's economy. Seek ye first, a little old, King James version here. But if you actually think about it, if you actually seek God's kingdom first, if you actually seek the ways of Jesus first, if you actually follow the ways that he has for you, if you look at the book of Proverbs and it says, here's the ways in which you will find life and goodness and beauty, then it actually looks to do this first. It says to give first. Because what giving says is that I'm putting my dependence where my money's going. And if I live first, I'm putting my dependence here. I got this. I'm putting my dependence in money. But if I actually give first, it says, God, I depend on you. God, it's all yours anyways. It's not mine. I'm just the money manager. I'm just trying to do what I can with it. We'll get to it again in a second because he's a good ending to the story here. And we're eventually invited into a life to give and then to think through saving. Like, there is a future. There's wisdom. There's things to like actually think about beyond just right now in this moment. And then we live. This is to honor God with our wealth by giving our first fruits. And then our barns will overflow. Then our vats of wine will overflow. When you are not the end, when your money is not the end, when God is the end, generous living flows from generous giving. See that? When you're living for yourself first with money, if you're just living, like, there's nothing generous happening for generosity to actually come out of. And now we've put power somewhere. Where when we flip it and we say, God, I'm releasing the power dynamic that money has over my life. I'm releasing the power that it says I need more and more and more and more. And that I need more so that I can be more, and I can be more, and I can be more. It releases the power that money has in our lives to say, God, you first. Let me think through my future a little bit. Yeah, I'm gonna find a way to live. I'm gonna do it okay. And everyone's gonna do it a little bit differently. But God, I give you back what you have given to me. And he continues, this shrewd manager. He ends up saying, I tell you, this is so interesting, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. So he says to this person who's essentially robbing his boss, hey, good job, because what you're doing is you're actually making friends with the money that I gave you. Because it's actually not yours anyway, so do the best you can with it by making friends, by doing good to others. Where, again, as we read in the Proverbs earlier, that people will actually pray for you to be blessed because they know that things will pass through you. Are you making friends? Are you making friends with your money? I think our invitation to transformation this morning is what could feel like financial irresponsibility. And I say could because it could actually be financial irresponsibility. But what could feel like financial irresponsibility, God calls a life of generosity. He sees it and he says, man, that's so generous. You're starting to get the picture, like I want you to live generous because I've been so generous to you. I've given you my son so that we could be in life together. I've modeled this way that actually leads to more in your life. And you might see a little bit of it now, you may not, but make friends so that you'll end up in eternal dwellings. What are you doing now with your money? It doesn't seem to say much about worrying about heaven and hell. It says, what are you doing with your money? Don't worry about if you believe that right thing and you've got it all figured out, because then you'll go to heaven and hell. It says, what are you doing with your money? Are you making friends? Are you shifting the power? Are you inviting God into maybe the most powerful thing in and over your life? So now back to you on your $250K. We're not going to spend a ton of time here, but I want you to think about whatever you wrote. Whatever you wrote. And some of it might feel big. Like, you did the fun thing. Maybe you bought the boat. You can't afford a yacht on $250K, just if you tried. But like, maybe you did something. You paid off a little bit of debt. Okay, there's some stuff in there. But the generous things you wrote on there, the like, I'm going to give to this or do this or whatever it is, and those are some bigger numbers. What he ends up saying to this shrewd manager, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. What you have right now is what matters, not what you don't have. What you have right now is what matters, not what you don't have. And if you're anything like me, you're tempted to live a life thinking about what you don't have. And then essentially I end up doing nothing with what I do have because it's not enough. But he's saying what you do with little, you'll do with much. If you want to be the most generous person in and around your circle of influence the next 10 years, are you the most generous person now with what you have? If you want to somehow change the social structure in someone's family through finances in the next 20 years, what are you doing to help start doing that now? Right? Who you are right now is who you're going to be slight degree turns in 10 years from now. If you're not generous now, you're not going to be generous in 20 years. Small percentage maybe says you will be. But do you hear that? What you do with little, you will do with much. So the things that you have envisioned to do on that, to get out of debt, to help a family member, to give things away, to support an organization, to give to Midtown, whatever it is, are you doing that now in the small ways that you can? So let's do this, and I'm just going to include this in a ministry time for the sake of time. Kathy and Chad, if we can pass these out. So I'm just going to rattle some stuff off. I'm going to talk pretty quick, but I want you to sit with this list that's going to be passed around here in a second, and just going to talk about one church and just giving within the church and how that relates to you. But really, generosity just isn't just, call it this tithe language that we use in the church. If you're new to church and been around, that's one way of saying giving 10% of our income to the church. And I'm not going to work through any theological aspects or tell you what you should believe or what you think. I'll tell you kind of how I show up in this. But I want us to actually reflect on this. So this isn't just information to receive and go do something with. This is information to sit and actually ask God to speak and highlight something this morning for you. And then to actually act on whatever he might be speaking to you this morning. So first, here's the deal. Give to your church. I will push that all day long because I believe in it. I believe in Midtown. I believe what we're up to here. I believe the future. I believe what could happen to the next generation downstairs. And there's a couple parts of this. One, anything you do in your life does take money. Any organized thing, anything that actually puts things together and thinks through caring for people and all those different things, like it takes money, right? And not just the lights and different things, like that's an aspect, and that's why we have budgets and we keep things in percentages to not try to like just spend lavishly in one area, and we try to be thoughtful in that. But I think also like the invitation is for you to participate. So my wife and I, a number of years ago, just came to the commitment that we're going to give 10% of our income to the church that we're at. So this was before we were leading. And then we were going to set a separate portion aside to do a little bit more with, which we would just call kind of generous giving. So those are the times when we can buy a grocery or, whatever it is, right? The kind of the above and beyond 10%. We save a portion of that thanks to Justin more and more. And then after that, we live. And whatever that is, we live. We've gone up and we've gone down. I've made 6 figures, and then I've worked Bed Bath & Beyond my first year as a professional soccer player. Bet you never heard that story. But when you're loaned from a second division team and paid very cheaply, you also got to get a little side gig to do the thing that you want to do. Bed Bath & Beyond. So Andy and Rob aren't here, but I may have sold them like a bath rug or something because they lived in Utah for a while. So like I get it, and we feel the differences. And there's been times where we've had much. But what I can say is the joy that we still have to give that percentage and actually see it every once in a while grow a little bit, no matter how much we have, that is a beautiful thing. And that's why I think percentages are helpful when you're thinking about giving. Because the reality is, if you don't tell your money where to go, it's going to tell you where it's going. It's the same thing you do with your calendar. If you don't tell your time where it's going, it's going to tell you where to put your time. So the invitation is to give. And I think what happens when we start doing things, or like we've been doing, like I think about some of the ability to like support the Afghan refugee family recently. Being able to buy a washer, dryer, and some furniture for a single mom whose house burnt down. Like we can keep going through this. We're able to help send someone to a very specific medical clinic because they've had ongoing medical hardship in their life and they just cannot find an answer. But we as a church have collectively participated in these things. So as we all give, we give. It becomes this percentage. We as a church set 10% aside to do those things with. And we continue to work and dream as that money builds up a little bit of what are the one or two things that Midtown's called to do financially, and how do we be a blessing? The other part of that means that if you're in this church and you need help, we have a benevolence form that actually says, what is your help? What is your hardship? And we have a serious conversation around things. But for those of you in the church that need help, or you know someone that needs help, let's do it. Let's write some checks and help some people out financially, whatever it is. We just need to have the conversation. So that comes with, as the invitation is to give, it's not just to hoard. It's actually to give away. And so we work through that as a church, okay? The other piece is you may be in a position of where, like, you know what, I'm strapped, I give to this organization, I do this, honestly, we just lost an income, blah, 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 all those different things. You might know someone that has money that you could say, hey, I believe in what this church is up to, you should talk to them because they like to do generous giving in their life. You might know someone who has wealth to say. I'd love to have a conversation with them. Right, so this goes beyond you just writing a check. Now with that, you could also write a check. So each of these has a link, and then on your sheet there's a little QR code at the bottom. That's going to bring you to a page that you're looking at with the actual live links. Now here's the deal. You do that, whatever percentage you come up to in your conversation with me, with others, with God, and then we look at other organizations. What are you doing locally? Every Neighborhood Partnership, Living in Fresno, Central Valley Justice Coalition. We're thinking through how are people actually being affected in our neighborhoods, and then they're doing great work right in and around our zip code to actually work with people that need resources, just beyond financial. But is there an organization? So now it says, hey, this is where I'm committing my spiritual health to this church, and then I say, here's the thing that my heart burns for. And it could be beyond, aside from this list. Here's the thing that my heart burns for that I want to be a part of, and I'm going to give to that because I'm releasing the power that money can have in my life by saying, God, you first. Right? And then we can work down, give internationally. Chris Collins here in the organization, him and Holly. Chris leads Waves, which is a trade school operation out of Africa. One of the new things that they're doing, they have a program called One Student. $10 a month could actually support the training, the education of a new student. So you can work through something like that and say, hey, my heart burns for that. There's plenty of other international organizations. Here's a fun one. This is why you have the envelope. Give anonymously. If you want to try this on where God actually says, test me in your giving, if you want to try this on, look at this list and tell me if this isn't uncomfortable. Give it to a single parent in your neighborhood. Give it to a previous church you left, yes, even if you still have a grievance with them. Give it to a different church in town. Pause here for a month. Give to another church that you see is doing good work in a lower socioeconomic neighborhood, whatever it is, however you want to quantify that. Or give it to someone you see as an enemy. Like whoever you have something with, put money in an envelope that's going to make you feel uncomfortable, that you're going to miss a little bit, and go put it in their mailbox and walk away. And see what God does in your life. See what happens in you. See where your dependence shifts and you say, man, I'm so free from this. I'm free from one, holding them as my enemy. I can actually bless the people I disagree with or have been harmed by. But man, money does not have everything to say in my life. I'm going to release this anonymously because then I also don't need the recognition for giving it. So there's another piece. And then give yourself. This morning I thought about if I go grab groceries from Smart & Fun. There's a couple guys that tend to hang out in the parking lot. They help move carts around. They offer me a cart all the time. Every once in a while I have $1 on me or they help load my groceries. Like they're hanging out there, houseless, but they're thinking, you know what, I could go help move some grocery carts right now for people. I can put them away. I can offer a cart to people. Like, what is that? Maybe you don't have money, but you can write gratitude cards to people. Maybe you can look at the Serve Fresno site and find an organization that you want to give your time to. There's 1,000 ways to go about this.